The explosion wasn't on the battlefield. It was inside her head. Every time someone called her, just the driver. Morning heat shimmered over fob ironwood, turning the air to glass and engines to mirages. Specialist Riley "Rye" Morgan tightened the last bolt on her up-armored Humvee when a gravel-edged voice cut through the motor pool. "Rye, stay with the wheels. Real soldiers have work to do." Staff Sergeant Miguel "Miggs" Ortega. Same tone, same smirk, same sting. She didn't answer, just wiped the sweat and grease from her brow, turning fatigue into war paint. Controlled, silent. But under that calm, something dangerous was coiling tighter with every word she didn't say. Back home in Ridgeview, Idaho, Riley had hunted elk with a .308 Winchester before 16, and rebuilt engines with her father before she could drive. The Army saw a 5'4" mechanic. They didn't see the girl who could split a playing card at 200 yards. The radio beside her crackled. Routine chatter? Nothing urgent. She moved down her checklist. Tire pressure, fluids, comms, weapon mounts. Everything perfect. Precision was her rebellion against invisibility. "Specialist Morgan, transport for Major Keene," the intercom barked. Another VIP run. She climbed in, the Humvee's diesel growl rumbling through her chest. Major Evelyn Keene slid into the back seat, eyes buried in paperwork. To her, Riley was a seat on wheels, furniture in uniform. At the comms building, the major stepped out without a word. Riley stayed behind, engine idling, eyes tracing the horizon where heat shimmered like restless spirits. Another invisible morning. Then, the radio screamed. "This is Echo 6. We're pinned at Redstone Valley, taking heavy fire. Need immediate backup." Gunfire, shouting, static, silence. Echo 6. Ortega's patrol. The same men who'd laughed and rolled out without her an hour ago. Around her, the base erupted, boots pounding, alarms wailing, the quick reaction force scrambling. But minutes meant lives, and they were already running out. Her gaze snapped to the armory, 50 meters away. Inside waited an FN M249 saw, belts of 5.56, and body armor she'd delivered 100 times. She looked at her reflection in the windshield. Small, underestimated, furious. Regulations were chains. Her pulse was the key. She turned the ignition halfway, then stopped. No, not yet. First, the gun. If nobody was going to save them, she would. You're watching Riley Morgan's story, where courage breaks every regulation. If this hit you, don't just scroll past. Hit subscribe and stay with us for part 2. Because sometimes, the battle starts the moment you're told to stand still. The radio was still crackling when Riley slammed the Humvee door and ran. Boots pounded dirt, sand flaring behind her as she sprinted toward the armory. Every rule screamed stop. Every instinct screamed move. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed over racks of rifles and locked steel. Specialist Dana Ruiz, the armorer, looked up from her clipboard just as Riley burst through the door, face streaked with sweat, breath sharp, urgency radiating off her. "Riley, what the hell?" "Echo 6 is pinned at Redstone Valley. I need the saw, now." Ruiz blinked. "The FN M249? You're not cleared." "Their comms are blacked out. Ironwood Actual can't raise them. They're dying out there, Ruiz." Silence snapped between them, heavy, electric. Ruiz glanced at the base radio beside her. Nothing but static. The weight of command failure hung in the air. "Then hand it over," Riley said quietly. "Or get out of my way." Ruiz swallowed hard, torn between orders and the look in Riley's eyes. Raw, certain, defiant. She slammed the radio once more. Dead air. The choice was made for her. 4 belts, 200 rounds each, Ruiz muttered, unlocking the cage. "If anyone asks, this never happened." Fair trade, Riley said, already moving. Metal clacked as she loaded the weapon, the sound final, like a verdict. She slung 2 ammo belts across the passenger seat. The rest stayed behind. Light enough to move, heavy enough to fight. She fired up the Humvee. The diesel engine roared, angry, alive. Through the windshield, red warning lights flashed across the base. Then the intercom crackled. Ironwood actual to all units. Unauthorized vehicle Bravo 2 outbound. Stop that Humvee. Riley gritted her teeth. Too late. The gate loomed ahead. 2 guards stepping forward, rifles half raised, confusion cutting through the sirens. Private Nate Collins shouted, "Riley, you can't roll out without orders." She leaned out the window, voice low, steady. "Echo 6 is bleeding out. Move, or I drive through you." Collins froze. His hand hovered over the radio, then dropped. "God help you, Morgan." He waved the barrier open. Riley slammed the accelerator. The Humvee lunged forward, crashing through the gate as alarms howled behind her. Dust swallowed the base in her wake, chaos shrinking in the rearview mirror. Ahead, smoke spiraled against the sky like a black wound. Redstone Valley, 12 clicks east, 10 minutes at full throttle. Her hands locked on the wheel. Her pulse matched the growl of the engine. For the first time, she wasn't driving someone else's mission. She was driving straight into war. The road should have been empty. Instead, it was on fire. Dust swallowed the Humvee as Riley Morgan tore across the dirt, the engine howling like an animal pushed too far. Redstone Valley, 12 clicks east, 10 minutes at full throttle. She drove like hesitation could kill. Static hissed through the radio. Gunfire, screaming, then dead air. Every second of silence felt heavier than an explosion. Then she saw it. Smoke boiling over the ridge, thick, black, alive. 2 Humvees down. One burning, one riddled with bullet holes. Bodies sprawled across the sand like broken shadows. Some moved. Most didn't. Riley's jaw locked. Her stomach turned to iron. She yanked the handbrake, the Humvee fishtailing sideways into cover on higher ground overlooking the valley. The engine coughed, then died. She grabbed the FN M249 saw, 2 belts of 5.56 draped across her shoulder, light enough to move, heavy enough to fight. The air shimmered with heat. The metallic tang of cordite stung her tongue. Her father's voice echoed through memory. "When you're outnumbered, don't hide. Hit hard, hit first, and never stop." She racked the charging handle, exhaled halfway, then squeezed the trigger. The saw roared alive. Tracer rounds cut through the haze, red lightning in a sandstorm. The first insurgent dropped before he knew what hit him. The second dove for cover, too slow. Confusion spread like wildfire through the ambushers below. There were maybe 18 of them, spread too wide, firing in every direction, expecting no resistance from the ridge above. Riley worked in short, surgical bursts. 5 rounds, shift, 5 rounds. Each controlled, each deliberate. The saw wasn't rage, it was rhythm. Down in the valley, Echo 6 came alive. "Who the hell is that?" Lieutenant Cho's voice cut through the net. "Riley Morgan," Ortega answered, disbelief cracking his tone. "She came back." Momentum flipped. Echo 6 regrouped, their fire syncing with hers. Every burst from Riley's hilltop opened space for their movement. Controlled chaos turned into a pattern. Bullets chewed through the Humvee beside her, spiderwebbing glass, kicking sand into her face. She ducked, reloaded fast, belt in, cover slammed, pull, fire. Then movement caught her eye, an insurgent rising behind a boulder, RPG-7 on his shoulder. The metallic glint hit her like instinct. No time to think. She pivoted, fired from the hip. 3-round burst. The man crumpled backward, the rocket spiraling off and detonating harmlessly in the rocks. Riley steadied her breath. "Instinct, not luck," she muttered. "Training pays off." The world went still for a second, just wind and smoke twisting in the heat. Then she fired again. Her rhythm was merciless now, steady as machinery. The ridge thundered, the ground vibrating beneath her boots. The insurgents broke, some running, others dropping their rifles and diving for cover. Then, click. Empty. Riley yanked the last belt from her shoulder, slammed it home, and opened up once more. The final storm. When the last burst faded, silence returned, broken only by Echo 6's radio static. Through the haze, 5 shadows darted across the far ridge, regrouping, heavier weapons glinting in the sun. Riley stood behind the smoking Humvee, breath ragged, barrel glowing dull red. "This isn't over," she whispered. And with the sun bleeding red behind her, she became what they feared most. Not a mechanic, not a driver, but the machine on the hill. Smoke thinned, but her pulse didn't. Riley Morgan crouched behind her Humvee, the metal hot beneath her palms, the air buzzing with the ghost of gunfire. Below, Echo 6 pulled their wounded into cover, voices raw but alive. The battle should have been over. But through the haze, 3 dark shapes moved across the ridge. Deliberate, disciplined, rifles glinting in the sunlight. They weren't retreating. They were resetting. If they reached high ground, it would start all over again. Riley checked her last ammo belt. Half spent, slick with grit. Enough for one more push. She slung the M249 saw across her shoulder, exhaled once, and moved. "Morgan, stay in cover." Lieutenant Cho's voice cracked through the comms. "You've done enough." She hesitated, thumb on the switch, then turned the radio off. Some things couldn't be ordered. Some had to be finished. The smoke was thick enough to hide her, swirling low along the ground. Burned rubber, oil, and blood turned the air heavy. Each step was slow, deliberate, her boots sinking into dust and debris. 20 meters. 15. The first fighter turned, eyes widening. Riley dropped to one knee, firing short, controlled bursts. The saw thundered. The first man fell before he could shout. The second ducked behind a rock, blind firing. Bullets tore into the dirt near her feet. She rolled sideways, pain flaring in her left shoulder as a round grazed through the edge of her plate carrier. She hissed through her teeth, stayed steady. "You're fine. Keep moving." The third fighter broke from cover, sprinting across open sand, trying to flank her. Riley pivoted, braced the weapon, and fired. 2 bursts, clean and final. Then, silence. She stayed low for a long second, breath ragged, barrel glowing dull red. Her shoulder burned, but she didn't move. The valley had gone still again, only the wind, soft and strange after the violence. Then the radio crackled to life. "Echo 6 secure. Hostiles neutralized. Repeat, Redstone Valley secure." "Riley," Ortega's voice followed, rough and unsteady. "You just saved all of us." For the first time, she let the tension drain from her chest. She slumped against the smoking Humvee, the saw resting across her knees. The smoke rose thinner now, not ghosts anymore, but release. Then a low rumble. Not thunder. Rotor blades. The shadow of an AH-64 Apache swept across the sand, engines thundering like a heartbeat. Searchlights sliced through the haze, locking on her, the lone figure amid the wreckage. Riley looked up, a tired grin flickering through the exhaustion. "About time you showed up," she muttered. The wind from the rotors whipped her hair across her face, scattering dust and ash. And for the first time since the radio call, she allowed herself to believe. It was over. Heroes aren't born in war. They're revealed by it. Smoke still clung to Redstone Valley when the rescue convoy rolled in, rotor wash from the AH-64 Apache whipping the air into chaos. The fight was over, but the silence it left behind was louder than the gunfire. Riley Morgan sat behind the wheel of her battered Humvee, fingers locked on the steering wheel. The windshield was cracked, her reflection fractured, half soldier, half survivor. Her hands trembled not from fear, but from everything that had finally stopped. She could still hear the saw echoing in her mind. Not gunfire anymore, just ghosts. When the convoy reached Fob Ironwood, soldiers lined the dirt road in silence. No cheers, no speeches, just quiet acknowledgement. The kind that says we saw what you did. 2 MPs flanked her as she stepped down, not to arrest, but to escort. Procedure demanded answers. The story had already outrun the paperwork. In the motor pool stood Major Evelyn Keene, Lieutenant Cho, and Staff Sergeant Ortega. The 3 faces that once defined her rank, her limits, her world. Keene's voice carried across the silence, sharp and precise. Specialist Morgan, you left base without authorization. You disobeyed direct orders. You engaged hostile forces on your own initiative. Riley stood at attention, shoulders squared despite the blood drying through her torn sleeve. Yes, ma'am. The pause stretched, long enough for the sun to crawl across the tarmac. Keene studied her, eyes narrowing, weighing duty against truth. Then the major exhaled. You also saved 12 soldiers. You turned a slaughter into survival. She stepped closer, lowering her voice but not her authority. Pending review, I've filed a provisional recommendation for your assessment and selection with the 75th Ranger Regiment. You'll be investigated, but you'll also be remembered. A murmur rippled through the onlookers. Ortega took 1 step forward, his usual swagger stripped away. Rye, you showed us what a real soldier looks like. Riley saluted him, steady, eyes fierce but wet around the edges. Just did the job I signed up for, Sergeant. Days later, the gates of Fort Benning rose ahead, steel, stone, and history, the proving ground of the elite. Riley adjusted the duffel on her shoulder, M249 case in hand, the same weapon that had once made her invisible, now her proof of purpose. An instructor at the checkpoint glanced up from his clipboard. You sure you belong here, Morgan? She met his gaze without flinching. I'm not here to prove I belong, she said. I'm here because I already do. He studied her a moment, then nodded once. Welcome to RASP. As she stepped through the gate, the world behind her fell away. The smoke, the screams, the doubt. What remained was purpose. They used to call her just the driver. Now they called her by name. Because in war, the deadliest weapon isn't the biggest gun, it's the one nobody saw coming.